I want to see if Lisa Riggs is with us yet.
I am.
Hi, Lisa. It's so good to see you, right?
Well, I'm going to get on here in a minute, but the
Yeah.
screen is difficult. Hang on. There we
Yeah,
go.
and then we're holding on Derrick coming on board. So let's just start with the order of how you guys have gotten on here so far. Let's start with you, Carla. This is just sort of an open conversation about digital transition, and I want you to feel comfortable. Just take it any way you want to go, because we're spotlighting Oregon right now. But what we've been talking about has been about the mind-bending efforts in logistics, going hybrid, kids are everywhere. That's been freak out. And then the social emotional impacts. This is just, it's a moment of grief, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any easier, any quicker. And it's heavy. It's a very heavy time. And leaders have to be like, well, let's get together, and be cheerful. So those have been our two themes. But Carla, you go share fourth, and then if you want to, you can share screen. I can stop sharing and you can take over.
Oh, I really didn't bring anything share to screen because to the
Okay.
screen to share because, as you said, I see this as more of a conversation.
Good.
And learning from each other about where the path, the journey that we've come through, and the journey that we are still on as we move through this year.
Okay.
And first of all, hi, everyone. Glad to be here and talk to you. I have some esteemed colleagues to speak with today, both Derrick, who I've spoken with many times in many different venues, and Lisa. I'm glad to be here at the table with you as well. As you might imagine, my work at the Department of Education changed dramatically on March 12th, 2020. We had been hosting our EdTech cadre that was supposed to meet face-to-face on the 11th and 12th. At 10:30 that night, I got a call from our assistant superintendent saying, you got to contact everybody and tell them not to come tomorrow. The governor has canceled all meetings. So imagine telling 75 people don't show up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And nobody showed up except for part of my leadership team, who was helpful to greet anybody that might have not gotten the message. When I walked into the department, there were two things said to me that were really kind of stunning. One was, we should have been listening to you for the last 20 years. And the other was, and how does this
do
make
a
you
victory
feel?
dance, Carla? Come on.
They said, this is our I told you so moment. And for me, it really broke my heart and almost brought me to tears, because as people were saying, oh, we're moving everybody to online. And I'm like, we got a problem there. Broadband connectivity, teacher preparation and readiness for this shift, kids having devices, and access to the internet is not just like picking up your cell phone and calling somebody. And someone said, well, you're just not being innovative. And so we did a survey of all the districts, and what did they say? All of those things.
Yeah.
But it broke my heart because we haven't been listening. We haven't been paying attention. We haven't been making investments that we need to make, both at the state level and in some of our districts, in terms of devices and resources to kids, but most importantly, the professional development for the digital age. And I'm not doing any blame on the districts here. The districts have done a phenomenal job at trying to turn around and make the best out of making lemonade out of lemons. And we've had a lot of lemons this last year. The work that's happening out there is phenomenal. But what we did at that time then is to bring together a bunch of our educators, our business partners, our philanthropy. And on May 25th, we had 100 people together from all of the different organizations in the state, saying, here's the data from the surveys that we've collected from districts. We know we've got some issues: broadband, devices, professional development for teachers. We need all of your wisdom at the table to say, okay, what do we do and how do we move forward from here? Out of that came a report that we took to Governor Brown with the findings from that. And after our conversation with her, she gave us $28.3 million of the GEARS Act funding, the federal funding, to give out to districts in comprehensive distance learning grants. And those grants were used for broadband access, including hotspots and being able to pay for the services that the families can't afford. And that's become an even greater issue, I think, as families have lost position or employment. If you have multiple kids in the house, one hotspot doesn't work.
Yeah.
Learning from all of those things. But then districts use that funding to help buy devices for students. I think we have almost a 1-to-1 in the state now at this point.
Were you able to get them all, Carla? Because there was shortages all over the place.
I'll tell you what we did about that.
Yeah.
They could use it for curriculum and learning management systems, and of course for professional development. Yes, supply chain issues were huge for hotspots and for devices. And what we did is we worked with our internet service providers like Verizon, or Comcast and AT&T to get hotspots and to get them at discounted prices on a state contract that was available through DAS. We also worked with Dell to get computers fast-tracked or Chromebooks fast-tracked so that we could get them in the hands of our students and our teachers. We did everything we could to try to get, as we were hearing supply chain issues, and we started hearing that really early on, because remember, the supply chain that we're dealing with is not just Oregon, it's not just the United States. This is a global supply chain issue at this point.
Yeah.
So I think what happened between when districts didn't have devices, they were putting out packets to kids. They were just doing some of the most creative stuff I've ever seen educators do in this state. So that was great. As we got the funding out and we got into fall, then we had the wildfires. And in some places where millions of dollars had been put into deployment of laying fiber so that we could get connectivity to communities, some of that was burned and just completely lost. The reality, I think, that we've learned in the lessons, I guess the shifting our focus and the challenges we have now, reality that our infrastructure will take additional millions of dollars to really get every home connected in the state. We have the challenge of public lands and tribal lands where you can't run fiber over or dig under. And then we have a lot of this basalt stuff that's really challenging in valleys like where the McKenzie River is. We have the continued pandemic and school closures that where we know that the lack of broadband is going to continue to be a problem for some of our families. I talked to a parent last week who was paying $175 a month for satellite service to their home with a cap of 100 megabytes, which meant for her child, who's a freshman in high school, they had about 2 weeks worth of data in a month, and then they hit their data cap. So they either had to pay more or there was no connectivity for the child.
Please tell me you went and beat up that provider. Please tell me you the state beat them up. Like, I want to hear that because that's horrible.
We are working on that. Okay. That's one of the things we're bringing. We still meet with our business partners and our philanthropy partners and our community service partners, and the internet service providers are a part of that. And I have found that sometimes it's better to share that story and let them deal with it, because they can put on a lot of peer pressure that as a state agency, we can't. I think one of the biggest things now, we talk about social and emotional health for our kids, but we're also trying to talk about it in terms of care and connection for our educators and our district administrators. They're exhausted. They're concerned about safety. They're being asked to take on more challenges and be ready to shift no matter what comes in the future. Hey, we're going to be doing in-person to the best of our ability, but we also know that with the different mutations of the virus coming along, it's still an unknown for us. We are getting better at how to deal with it and are better at our safety measures. But we all know that we may still have to change change what we're doing on a dime based on the metrics in our communities. So all in all, my heart really goes out to all of the folks out there that are boots on the ground doing this work. You know, the stories and the information they give us helps us do our job better. But our educators are doing phenomenal things across the state. I'm so proud of them. We can't hear you.
Oh, oops. I'm so glad you're concentrating on that, because I think we had to start. And then I'm gonna come over to you, Lisa. And hi, Dr. Brown. Hi. So, let's go to Lisa next, but thank you, Carla, because concentrating on the positive of the fact that, we just got hit with a pandemic. Hello. Normal has left the building. There's no normal. And every day when you come to work, if any learning occurs at all, just thank your lucky stars. Yeah. So let's just be there. And I know we're under way more pressure than that, but really, let's just say that, something has happened and everyone stepped up to the best of their ability. Okay. So Lisa, again, so good to see you, my dear. You look awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So share forth. Let's hear from you.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate this. And again, the conversation around digital transition is so important because just like Carla spoke, is we should have been listening to you, Carla. And we were doing our very best. So coming into Oregon, knowing that instructional practices fall around all of our tools and our techniques. And so it was very important for me to begin the conversation about digital convergence. And it didn't make sense to anyone. Yeah. And what do you mean? And how do you blend this? And we need a technology plan. We need an instructional plan. I said, no, we need a plan. And it was about combining those things. And so fortunately, the digital convergence started our work 3 years ago in leadership. And we started through practicing, going through change, change theory. And not that comes back to us in a pandemic and then with fires and such, but it resonated with me that this is why we were doing this work. So I just wanted to say that it's exciting. There is enduring innovations that we have that we can move forward with, and I've spoken about that before. And the fact that so many districts across the nation instantly became one-to-one. And I know earlier you were talking about, well, they might have bought the wrong things or the junk or whatever, but so many of us did that, and it was the barrier of all barriers. And before the pandemic. And yes, we're still working with that community practice. So there are drivers in this digital convergence, and one of them is community. And we're still working with our community of broadband for districts, and counties and cities are non-negotiables. They are a right and a service that we all need to understand. We shouldn't have people driving up to our parking lots and parking there until our internet gets turned off or things like that. And I know that that's the case in many places, or driving our buses around to try to get them into the community. So that is a driver in this convergence or transition, as you're discussing. And we're going to continue to work with the newest of mayors and the new governor as Ms. Brown ends. But it's so important, and we'll see that in being legislated. I really do hope, and that is part of our job, to make sure that people know it's a tool that we need and our families need. But regardless, we went ahead and purchased and had many conversations, and just trying to find the best way to get the connectivity to our families, and then getting it into the hands of every one of our students, and multiple devices for families. Another driver was professional learning, and of course we didn't have enough time. It happened in March, and we ourselves, just so people know, Gresham Barlow has not returned. We have not had any in-person learning. There are some districts in Oregon that have returned, some limited in person, some hybrid, but we have not yet, because the metrics in Multnomah County, as you know, are much higher than others. But we're starting to see some relief, and we're starting to see that the return to learn metrics are now not mandated, but we still have the requirements of 35 square feet for our students and such. And so we're slowly returning to in-person with most of our most marginalized students. But as you know, this week athletics, they're going to be pushing the way. So, and that's a whole other story. Another driver is the digital ecosystem. And I know you talked earlier about that. How do we have the infrastructure? How do we have the connectivity for our families? How do we even turn on computers and moving forward in every elementary, middle, and high? And that's a county Multnomah ESD issue, because that's where we get our connectivity, and they're working as quickly as they can. We were lucky to have some grants and things as well for our middle schools. And then there's the modern curriculum, and that's what I want to talk about, because I'm an instructional background and love it, but how we teach, when we teach, and how we make things available are just crucial. And that's where the innovations are coming from. We need to meet our students when they have time. That means those that are juggling jobs and things in high school, but then those where we've always talked about time of day, and now with all of those other things. And we want to be able to have such a variety of offerings, which will continue to include digital and blended learning. And it isn't the same old teaching. Just ask, my my college daughter, where university professors continue to lecture and then give you just the same amount, whether it's, connected socially or not. It doesn't work that way. So we're building our infrastructures and utilizing our student learning platforms differently. And those are huge. And we really took all that stuff off the plate for our teachers so they could just focus on playlists and how to engage our students, because engagement looks different now. And I'll end by saying the last two drivers are instructional models. I think we're all talking about how that has to change. But what becomes more important is that digital, the technical plan, the IT plan, the infrastructure planning with instruction, and that's key. And then building our leadership to be able to do that. That's what we've been working on. I know people say, what are they deciding? Because we can't decide to come back or not. We have been working behind the scenes and trying to reduce the number of flip-flops that we see at our level, so our teachers can continue to do their work. And you're right, everyone's tired and everyone is worn out, but we owe this to our students.
Yeah, and I love everything that you just said. It was also a perfect setup to move on to Dr. Derrick Brown from a technology perspective. So Dr. Brown, it's so good to have you with us. And we're just sort of letting it rip here. Like, we're talking about what's happened and then kind of what our takeaways are and what we think the future is all about. And then I'm going to come back and interject some questions about where it's going from our research.
Sounds good. Hello, Leilani. Really good to see you.
Yeah.
Carla, I see several friends here, Lisa. And by the way, thanks for the honorary degree, but no, I don't have a doctorate.
Oh, well, you do on the screen now. So, now you do. I gave a doctorate to a different superintendent in Utah already this year. He didn't realize it, but yeah.
I appreciate it. I feel like we've all earned it for sure, going through this pandemic. No doubt about it. Wow, how do I follow up with Carla and Lisa? But I will begin to say that we're starting where we finished. I mean, Chris McMurray's on, and we started this work when it wasn't popular. And we had the charter from our superintendent and board, and their thought was, we're going one-to-one. It's all about devices. And we kind of backed up and said, well, what is the outcome? And what are we going to do with the device once you get it into the classroom and in the hands of students? And we really flipped the thing on its head and started looking at curriculum, core, supplemental, and what does this mean to teachers? And what is it going to look like in the classroom? And we spent a good year with administrators talking about the why this was important for a digital instructional ecosystem, going from textbook adoptions to looking at digital curriculum. And then the following year, second year, this is Evergreen Public Schools, by the way, where we were doing this work. And the second year we had 30, if my memory serves me correctly, 37 schools. And about 15 of those schools, we worked with about 10 teachers in each of them, almost in a grassroots effort, but with their willingness, the administration's willingness, and more importantly, parents to begin almost piloting and testing curriculum, devices. What does this mean? What is it going to look like? And by year 3, we knew enough about what we were trying to do to where we were adopting digital curriculum, and that's when we implemented the devices. Chris and I are no longer there. We left in 2019. I'm so excited to be at North Clackamas, where Tricia George was here, and very much the same thing. They had already started this work. Devices were in carts, in classrooms, and when COVID hit, it was just deliver, distribute. But it was a big shift for teachers because it's like, well, wait a minute, we're not one-to-one. And it's like, well, you've always been one-to-one. You might not have had the device in your hand all the time. Learning, it was pulled out and used appropriately like a tool for access and equity. And so it was a hot mess in the spring. I wasn't here, but it was everywhere. I was in DeKalb. I was in Atlanta County School District, 100,000 kids, 16,000 employees, and everyone was struggling. We stepped back over the summer, regrouped, did lessons learned. I transitioned, Tricia retired, I came here, same thing. Regardless of the size of the district, we were trying to right size and figure out what our teachers needed, what our families needed, and it all pointed back to the why. So we spent, shortly before school started, building up our web presence, talking to families, building up a parent-family help desk, and communicating with families about what we're doing, our single sign-on, which is ClassLink. That's the point of entry for students when they open up their Chromebook and they have access to all of the digital tools and resources. But what we didn't realize is that all of our teachers weren't on the same starting point. We have our novices, our intermediates, and our high flyers and innovators. So we really had to break it down. What are the fundamentals? And Chris says this, what's the floor? What are the minimum things that we're going to do? So it started with, we're not using Zoom, Google Meets. That's what we're going to use. We are Google Classroom, Google for Education District. So we're going to use Classroom, and we have been using it for 4 years. So that foundation was there. But we had to begin to tell that story to families because they didn't experience the day in the life of the student in the classroom. So it was really about storytelling as much as possible in board meetings, online, as we beefed up our website for the digital transition and the pedagogical shift. The instructional technology website started with on demand, and we put the core elements up there. We still are, it's in process, it'll never end. This is a journey of what are the important resources for the school district. You know, for example, Seesaw, K-2. We adopted Dreambox. We're continuously adopting, and as we adopt and build out this matrix, we're going to say, here are the tools and resources. Here's who they are for, and then more information. We're still building this out. It'll be done very soon. And then there's so many on-demand tutorials for teachers to kind of get in where they fit in. And that was a big shift as well. All of our teachers nationally are working harder than they ever have, because not only are they doing their instructional time, they're learning about what this looks like. And then now as we plan, we're still remote as well. We hope to have K-1 back in school after spring break, but now we're planning on what does that look like? How do we continue with what we've learned over the last 8-9 months to make sure we don't lose that momentum of instruction digitally when we're back in the classroom? So we're building out what those lesson plans look like so that our teachers have a place to start. when they're back in the classroom. But what we have really decided upon and really all agree on, first and foremost, with LIPI, the limited in-person instruction, is let's focus on instruction. For the limited time that we have them, let's not talk about technology. Let's not talk about access. Let's make sure we're meeting our students and families where they are so that they're not falling through the cracks during this pandemic.
This is lovely, everything that you just said, because you're talking about the mutation of the teacher role. I love talking about this. Lisa and Carla, you've heard me talk about this a lot. Derrick, did I have you with us last time we were up there? I think maybe you did come to one of the events.
I was at the one with Chris at the ESD, Clackamas ESD,
yeah.
a couple of years ago. Yep.
Okay, that was fun. We played a game that day. I remember that.
We did. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Can't
Okay,
wait
so
to do
now
it
what I want to spin at you guys and then come back around the horn to each one of you is it feels like what's just happened is that education just sort of fell over the cliff that Walmart had to fall over after Amazon came on and beat up everybody in retail. Amazon is now straight up and vertical. I think they're going to be the first $1 trillion company, or already are, I'm not sure. Versus Walmart, who's really starting to get their act together, but lives in a dual universe of physical stores. Like if you go on their app right now, it's like, I'm going to do the physical store thing. I'm going to order from there. And then you got to go to the other app and then online, right? And it feels like education needs to think about backwards engineering itself in a much more intensive way. Because I don't know if you were on here earlier, Carla, maybe you were, but yesterday I shared the data of the number of students who have opted out. They're not coming back. And on top of those, which is somewhere between 33% of the American public now and 42%, a massive and some of that's charters, right, which are still public, so, but not very much of it, like 11%. So when you look at those numbers, and then you add in 20% of the students you have now don't want to come back at all. They want to remain online because they're the ones who are like, hey, I just woke up. I love it this way. I don't want to go there. I'm not a social kid. I'm not a sports kid. Right. And then meanwhile, while you're online, 35% of the kids are not showing up or not showing up regularly. Okay. So these are the numbers. It's a fractured landscape, and it's requiring you to rethink your time and your space and suddenly be an absolutist on how online intersects with humans, which is the last thing you said, Derrick. That what you do when you're teaching is a very precise thing. And it's not like you're just running a class and you're disciplining, hey, stop doing that. Yes, you can go to the bathroom. Okay, now we're going to do this. Pull out your book, blah, blah, blah. You're not doing that anymore. It's a very precise thing. If you're in Atlanta, Georgia, all your schools are doing this, teaching to the screen and the kids in front of you at the same time. That's insane. They kind of know it. But anyway, let's talk about this true re-engineering of time and space and the role of teachers. Okay, Carla, you go. I know you're chomping at the bit.
I liked that you used re-engineering, because when I think of reimagination, it's like we're at point A and we're going to get to point Z, and there's going to be steps along the way, but we already know that endpoint. With engineering, it's iterations, improving for precision, improving for quality, and continuously doing that as our technology evolves, as our strategies for instruction evolve, as the needs of our kids and our families evolve. I think that we need to be doing a whole design thinking format about what the future of what education looks like in the future. And I think in terms of the future of online, we are recognizing that in many schools and at the state that online opportunity needs to be there. When you think of schools being a safe place for some of our kids, our LGBTQ plus kids, schools are not necessarily a safe place. For some of our kids who are being bullied, that's not a safe place, but they feel safer and more secure online. So let's make sure we give them that opportunity.
Yeah, but
Luana?
let me just make a comment on that and then keep going. Is that the difference between Amazon and Walmart is the greeter.
Mhm.
Sometimes you want the human interaction. Amazon gives you none. Like, I challenge you to try to talk to somebody from Amazon. Walmart has 2 zones, and it's beautiful, right? Because it hits all needs. And I think that's kind of where we're going when we're talking about this, because maybe the LGBTQ crowd needs its own social group. Maybe that's an online mostly, but it might be even district wide. But maybe there's a new, anyway, that the re-engineering of this does not leave out the humans.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Well, and one of the things you'll hear students say, and I heard this, and I'm trying to think where it was just a short video clip of a student talking, and she was basically saying, these educators need to get it straight. We don't want to be sitting in a seat 6 hours a day in a school learning. We want to do this on our own time. We want it to be flexible so that if we have a job, we can do that. We want it to be something where we have more choice about what we're doing, both in format and time and place. So those hearing and honoring those voices has got to be a critical part of our re-engineering process.
I like it. Okay, Lisa.
All of that is absolutely true. We do need to listen to our students and how they want to learn. Your statistics are not far from where we sit, but we have certainly done plenty of surveys to our families and students to know who wants what and when they want it, and who feels comfortable coming back, who's succeeding in an online setting, and that. But I think when I talk about instruction, I would want to say, I think this is going to make us more specialized in a variety of things, and stop trying to be the generalist that is doing the SEL, is doing the calls home, is doing the instructional planning, both blended, online and not. We have moved to certainly to connect with our students and really check on engagement. There has been so much outreach, and that's the social emotional aspects. That's been one-to-one. That's been case management. That's been a whole different realm of that, including, and then the mental health portions of our schools. So I look at our major shifts as specialization, and we need to target our professional learning around that. And we are already learning that with our discussions of the workforce, who's going to return in the setting that we have and who is not going to return because of individual health issues and such. And so with those decisions comes a variety of training and support and materials and tools and a shift in what we're doing. We know we are standing up an eGBSD, and that's going to continue. And it's just electronic GBSD. So those that are very comfortable in this setting, but we will do the hybrid approach of, we aren't going to be the Amazon. We are going to have the greeter. We are going to have the check-ins. It's going to be definitely around, doing the work, individualized, when necessary, but there's still that socialization of teaching and learning that we have to bring people together at the right moments. Mm-hmm. And so just planning that out and being very innovative with that is very important. And so so certainly the professional learning around that is going to shift, but I don't think that we can go back and be the generalist. That hasn't been successful. And now when we don't have the captive audience in the classroom sitting there, they're not going to stay. They're not staying. Our district is rather smaller than I've been in other districts, San Antonio and Washoe County. So, however, we've lost 500 students to a variety of different programs. And I know that but you said, and not to return. We want them to return. We're outreaching and planning on them to return.
Yeah.
and checking on what they want. So.
Yeah, and there's a video that'll go up online next week from Lambertville ISD. They have the most progressive restructure of time and space we've run across for a public district. Make sure you try to watch that because they're kind of, not egotistical about it at all, but they're pretty amazing. It's like, you did what? Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Okay, well, thanks, Lisa. Derrick, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with everything that I just heard. I'm trying to figure out what I could say differently. This certainly is an arranged marriage of our departments now, like it has never been before. From the business office to transportation, because meals are being delivered and have been since March. I mean, everyone is working so hard at just trying to meet the needs of our students and families. And so that's going to continue. Lisa said it, the engagement. My wife's a school counselor in Washington, and so in elementary, and that's the biggest thing right now is meeting families where they are. She's delivered more hotspots to families, stood on porches and doorways, trying to get the connectivity together. We just want to make sure that our students aren't falling through the cracks. Our parents, are working multiple jobs, or some because of language barriers aren't able to assist their children. And so we're just really, pardon my dog barking, just trying to meet our families where they are in all aspects. And that even begins, bear with me, let me get one of I have 3 learners at home. This year,
I just hope that my dog doesn't start barking at your dog.
It's possible, but this is what we do, right? We just keep going.
It's wonderful. Now we have to teach to humans. There was a teacher that was on yesterday giving us a lesson in motivation. And one of the things that she did in her motivation sessions is everybody brought their cat on their lap. Yep. And the window into our homes and our lives and our pets and everything, I mean, it actually is needed because we now feel like we're one big remote family. And, it's like everything's happening. The toilet's flushing in the background. It's like, whatever. At least we're all together. It's a less formal but distant world.
Absolutely.
It's actually kind of wonderful. So
hey,
go ahead.
Derrick, I don't remember you having a mainframe in your house. So kudos to you on building that. I think dog hair with reel to reel, that doesn't work, right?
No, it doesn't work. No, there's nothing that gets that off. It's too sticky.
Just a funny side note, the New Hampshire legislature just banned pets on coming across your screen during legislative sessions.
Oh my goodness. That's too much.
Well, that's probably one effective law I've heard of so lately. So that's interesting. Okay, Derrick.
I think what I'm most excited about is just trying to get our students back. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a good percentage, and we're going to have to think differently. Hybrid might always be here. We have some families through thought exchange have expressed that they don't know when they want their students to come back. They want them to be part of our setting, want them to be part of the district, but only if we have an offering that meets their needs. So we're trying to figure out what does that look like. And then our teachers are going to have to be flexible. Our associations are going to have to be flexible. I'm very thankful that we're in a school district where we're having these conversations and we're focused on what's important, and that is our teachers and our families. North Clackamas has always been that way. It's a diamond in the rough and very rare for a school district, but I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership of the superintendent and previous, as well as the school board. So that makes it easier for us to do the work because we don't have to think about what if. And our teachers too, they want to make sure that we have the offerings that are best for students. And so we're just trying to figure out what does that look like and what are those core elements and baseline resources that we have to teach to. And once we're back in person, be there with them, growing, learning, and fostering this as we move forward with this digital ecosystem. It's funny because Chris and I got made fun of, a couple of years ago. I hate that term, and why are we doing this? And Carla too. And it's so funny. And then the pandemic hit, and then off the cliff we all went. And here we are. So it's a beautiful mess, and I'm excited about it because This is what our students need. This is what's happening in the world. And for the colleges and universities that are closing, they weren't able to adopt fast enough in the brick and mortar. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose our customers, which are our students. We're going to lose our families because there are too many choices out there.
Yeah, so I'd like to share with you guys then as the final point of this conversation, the structure again of what we're kind of looking at, and then you give me your thoughts on it. Like, what's wrong? What's right? You know? So I'm going to do a new share on my other slide deck. So the structure that we were looking at, hopefully you can see the slides. I got to launch them fully. Yeah, there we go. Structure of time. This is the text structure. We'll send you this later, Derrick, the overarching pattern of all the things. But the problem that we've recognized is the number one problem with the current structure is the digital traffic. The digital traffic is way higher than it was in the physical classroom. We tend to think the LMS is handling that, but teachers are doing thousands of emails. So, and some of them have to be reminded even to check them, right? So the move to an individualized learning or distributed service model with extra liminal network organization, meaning even willingness to use outside things and people to manifest themselves into your brand, best-in-class history teacher out of Tampa. You know what I'm saying? So totally new construct.
It's really small.
Oh, it needs to be bigger?
Yeah.
I'm getting told like it's too small. We can't see it. Okay, so let me make sure I'm
Much better.
sharing the right thing. I'll share the bigger screen. There it is. So the move to a new sort of structure is like that flip I was talking about, flip to online, but then backwards engineer in the proper teacher intersection to manifestly have a higher care factor for the quality of humans, right? Like humans should be like your best point on the node. So what we started talking about is that, you know, student-centric hybrid personalization requires you to build your structure of lessons so that the intersection of the teacher isn't the given, like always the teacher, then the content. The content is first, and then intersection is planned algorithmically, auto cohorting, etc. So that looks like this. If you're on this lesson plan, maybe starting point is you do this pre-weeding here at the bottom and you hit the lecture intersection. It's got a red light because there's not enough of you who've hit it. Teacher set the cohort at 10. So you're told, go study something else, so you got to read. So you can be physically anywhere. You could be in a homeroom. And then when it gets triggered to your calendar, you're like, oh, I got an alert. I got to go to classroom 101B. And the teacher magically intersects with you like Uber. The other 10 kids arrive. Some of them are arriving digitally. The lecture, lesson, quality, small group, whole group moment, transaction occurs. And like Uber, you go your separate ways after that. And now you're on the rest of your path. So that structure looks a lot like, let me go back to this other slide. The game that we played. Did we get to play this with you, Lisa? Okay. I should send you this game again.
I think this was that. Yeah, this was definitely in the ESD that we played.
Yeah. So
We played it on a table though, not on the floor as I see this here. That
we're going to need a, we couldn't play it on the table anymore. It's not socially distant enough and everybody's touching all the stuff. But even this isn't socially distant enough because when we played it in Idaho, everybody's running into each other and that's not going to work. So we're going to have to figure out a digital way you can play it online and move your little digital cursor around on there. But the model is like Harry Potter World. It's everybody's in a homeroom. The homeroom is a virtual and physical space, studying with oversight, and then flight it out to intersect with teachers. Teachers have office space, did live or virtually. But it's a different structure. So your thoughts on that, because there's barriers, huge barriers. But this is a little like the online world has always worked, except now there's humans more involved, which is what has to happen for a lot of parents. They want the human socialness on campus stuff. They just don't want it all the time. So, Carla, your thoughts?
Yeah, when one of the slides back that we were looking at, when you talked about the algorithms, one of the things that has come up in our research where there's some great concern is algorithms and artificial intelligence, and how they might track students down certain pathways based on answering a question wrong because it was a bad hair day. But that has a lasting implication for that student in the pathway and their trajectory. Yeah. So how do you ensure that you're not incorporating bias into your algorithms that have a heavier impact on your emerging bilingual students, on your children of color, and on your special ed students?
Well, yeah, and I completely agree. This conversation doesn't end with change in structure. We have the equity issues of how things are built in the first place, and then we have ethics and algorithms issues.
Yeah,
I've got those years planned out in my mind. Just, Carla, nationally, we're gonna bungle it first because that's what happens, and then it's gonna get refined and refined and refined. I'd like to try to preempt some of that with you guys as thought leaders and a lot of other people that I know nationally, with at least raising this conversation like you just did.
That's one of our huge lessons learned in this.
Data ownership.
I didn't see your data, but I know from what we've been looking at, a large number of the students that are not showing up or that show up intermittently are our children of color, our emerging bilingual students, and our special ed students. So, and that's been a problem since day one. And given that some of the content and the curriculum that has been purchased by some of our districts we were talking about earlier, that's very not equity and anti-racist focus, that needs to be a primary focus of our work going forward. Whatever the models might be, we have to base what we're doing in equity and anti-racism. And right now, if we don't do that, we've lost an opportunity, a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, what do you think, Lisa?
I totally agree. I think that it has to be focused on equity and what that really means. And I agree with the adoptions and all of the purchases. You know, we're just looking at that right now, knowing that the state has delayed some of the RFPs and moving forward with some of the curriculums, and we want to jump ahead. And even some of the national companies, I was on another call earlier this week, and those that we know well, and I'm going to call it out, Ed Reports has great resources for us as educators of what is really reaching the standards and what's really easy and available for teachers to dive in and use. But there's no equity lens. There is nothing there that says that we have the appropriate materials, the authentic literature, those, and I cringe to think that if we don't do this right and we need to move forward with that. And this trend of what you say towards individualization is exactly as I was saying, that we have to do a lot of things and distribute the work in different ways. And we have to make sure that it's meeting the needs of our students that are having a difficult time engaging and stepping back into public education.
Yeah, we could either be totally overwhelmed with everything we're supposed to be covering, all of our bases right now, or we could say to ourselves, this is the most exciting time ever in education, and wake up every morning with a big smile on our face going, I wonder what's going to happen today, right? Like it's like totally wild, right? So Derrick.
Yeah, I like roller coasters. And so, this is the moment where we put our hands up and we go, wee, because it is exciting. It's, it really is. It's frightening. It's scary. it gets your blood rushing, but it's one of the things that, Chris and I used to talk about is go slow to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to do textbook adoption. So we need to take that lens in which we look through it and now talk about digital, because it's the same requirements with the spin of equity, what's best for brown, Black children. And then with those elements and those requirements begin to, and I hate to say check the boxes because it's not that simple, but when we're looking at the resources, does it meet our needs or meet the needs of those we're serving?
Right.
And then pilot it, test it, get the feedback from our teachers, get the feedback from our community. The board is going to be involved. So in some cases, we do have to move fast because we're responding to the need to be digital. But there are cases, especially when it's core, where we don't have to call it an adoption. We're calling it a pilot. We're calling it a proof of concept, just so we can get moving. And then, that buys us a year to go slow to go fast. And so that's what I think I'm most excited about as the arranged marriage that we have in North Clackamas with teaching and learning. Is that's the lens in which we're going to do it, because it has to be intentional. It has to be personalized, and we can't mess it up. We get one shot.
Yeah, I'm going to give you way more shots than that, Derrick, just so you know. But this has been awesome. So I want to wrap it up with any other comments from anyone else or observations you want to make. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. I know Aaron and Chris are both on here. Final comments from anyone? This has been such an awesome conversation.
I would say something going back to that excitement, because as much of a challenge, as much of the pain of what's going on, this is an unprecedented challenge, creating an unprecedented opportunity that calls for unprecedented action. And if we don't take this opportunity for that action, we won't see it again, we hope, because of pandemic or whatever else. But it's really a call to action for all of us.
So
I'm calling you all to action.
Call us out. So I think I just want to thank everybody for sharing your thinking and your time. And I think, yes, go slow to go fast. Do take action. Doing nothing isn't an option. The foot has to stay on the gas. We may not have it floored, but you got to keep your foot on the gas. And I think that there's some sentiment out there in the world with educators that things are gonna revert to something that I feel wasn't working in the first place, and that's just not going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. The horses are out of the barn, and we're not going back to something that historically has been sort of a morass. So we gotta get off that dime and start moving.
Yeah, and Leilani, in that model you had on the previous slide, where it's talking about, we still have to be able to do both, or maybe an additional version, right? We need to be able to find for those kids who like school, they exist. Quite frankly, we've catered to them to the point of about 60 to 70% of our kids for a long time, because they like coming to school. They like interacting with their friends. They like that interactive aspect of school. And then what we need to figure out is, how do we augment their experience while potentially adding a different kind of experience for people who want a different one. And I think what education is normally really good about doing is dropping everything, throwing out every baby with any bathwater we have, and going to something new and better. And then, doing it again, instead of saying, what we need to do is we need to look at these models. Quite frankly, Oregon could be considered like a petri dish, right? And we've got clusters of different bacteria that are growing all over the place. It's been successful. And the fact that if we don't take the time, and I'm looking right at you, Carla, yes, to look at what was successful and see how those could be applied and getting it out to the rest of the state, so that we could really see, this worked really well. These are not just people, systems that worked, and how we can apply those pieces to it. Because I think that's where we are is, it's really easy as an administrator to just be like, whoo, that's over. Okay. All right. I'm just walking around the building again. Right. That's really easy. As a former principal, I can tell you that's the easiest thing to do, is to go back to the thing that your staff is comfortable with. It's a harder thing as an administrator in a building or a district to say, I know you never got comfortable in this, but you gained some skill. And so we're going to actually play off of that to move forward.
Yeah. And we're going to keep looking at the different models we're hearing come out of the woodwork as we like tour through the country with these events. Lammersville ISD's got a good thing going on, but it's still sort of a little bit of a manual management of space and time. But being that homeroom, house room, center pin conceptualization, Harry Potter world kind of a thing, then virtual or whatever, and paths are still normalized, but you can pace separately. They're not necessarily competency based. This is the fractured model that we're looking at, because it disassociates teacher from classroom, but not teacher from student. So you don't have to be in a classroom running all the discipline all the time. You're elevated to teaching this only. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And so we'll keep you guys posted. Hybrid logistics, what's going on, what's going down with it all, but brilliant. And the thing I'm so happy about with all you Oregonians is the fact that you're in the fray. You're fighting the good fight. And you've done some really brilliant things. Derrick, I know you and Chris started this a long time ago. Carla, you've been doing this for a long time. Lisa, you've been coming to the events. You've been in it. So thank you for doing that. Thanks all of you. And keep up the good fight. We want to hear from you. We want to, if you ever need just a lifeline call me. I'll cheer you up. Because I'm proud. I'm super proud of all of you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Good event. All right. Thanks everyone. So last slide. Thanks to our sponsors and thanks all to you. See you next time when we roll back through, and bye for now.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Young children spend 75% of their school day involved in listening activities and need to receive 90 to 100% of information via the spoken word to understand the full meaning. But there are numerous barriers standing in the way of that critical intelligibility. And unfortunately, they can't yet fill in the blanks when things are missed. In students' environments, distance, directionality, and ambient noise all play a role. Speech gets quieter over distance, dropping in volume significantly as it makes its way toward the back of the room. Further, when teachers face away from their students, the sound level can be cut in half. Distracting ambient noise can also drown out speech, leaving students and teachers straining to effectively communicate. And simply increasing the volume of speech itself is often not enough. As loudness increases and teachers try to reach the entire room, students might be able to hear what's being said, but they may still struggle to understand it. For example, clarity is critical to the understanding of soft consonants, such as p, t, k, s, and more. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has added additional challenges to the listening environment, such as greater distance between students and teachers, masks and other facial coverings, and protective barriers on desks. With instructional audio, you can overcome these challenges. By leveraging a microphone with either a portable or installed speaker solution, you can ensure the teacher's voice achieves even coverage, regardless of distance, directionality, and ambient noise. And with an easy, tap-to-talk microphone, student voices are clearly heard by both their teachers and peers. Instructional audio provides a clearer way to hear the human voice and a pathway to elevating the learning and understanding of students in the modern classroom. To learn more, contact Lightspeed today.